Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. In this video I will be explaining all the changes in the new Caves and Cliffs update, also known as 1.18. The update is set to release on November the 30th, 2021, so we are very close to the release date, meaning most changes are likely here to stay, so aside from minor tweaks that might happen till the final release, this is what we are going to get, so let's get started. Starting with a major change among many, terrain as we know it has been completely overhauled, especially caves and mountains as well as the world height who has been increased. The new build limit is now at y equals 320, increasing to 64 blocks above the old limit, which used to be at y 256. And the bottom of the world was also extended below, now stopping at y minus 64 instead of 0, making the total world height from top to bottom 384 blocks. Another major change in the world generation is related to caves, which have been improved vastly and are now generating in a much larger scale, making them much bigger and open than before, big enough that you can even fly with an elytra inside because there's enough space for such. The cave changes also include some new types of cave and underground biomes, and the introduction of the deep slate layer as you can see here. This happens at y0 where the bedrock layer used to be before, and it will transition from y8 to y0, at which point it all should be deep slate instead, and all the stone types like diorite, andesite, granite should be replaced with tuff and gravel, including the ores that will be replaced with their respective deep slate variants. Caves now are divided into three major cave types. The old caves we used to know are now called spaghetti caves, and add some minor improvements to them. There is a new cave type called the noodle caves, which are thinner and more claustrophobic variants of the spaghetti caves, and the big and open caves are called the cheese cave. There are now underground biomes too, the dripstone cave and the lush caves. These have some new formations like big pillars that connect the top and the bottom of a cheese cave, and aquifers that generate regardless of the surface water level, with clay and drip leaves on them, or lava if it's below y0. And last but not least, there are now rare formations called ore veins, and they are composed from mainly copper or iron, and will generate, in the case of copper, with granite, raw copper and copper ore above y0, and iron veins will generate with iron ore, tuff and blocks of raw iron below y0, so keep an eye for this because you can get great amounts of resources if you happen to find one. The mountains and general terrain have also been heavily changed, being the most obvious change when you create new worlds, since the game now uses a different algorithm to generate the worlds, making the terrain not dependent of the biome, meaning you can see almost any biome generating inside any terrain. There are also some new mountain specific biomes, like the meadows, the groove, the snowy slopes, the jagged peaks, the frozen peaks and stony peaks. These biomes will tend to generate more pointy and higher, changing the landscape and looking more like a mountain. In the groove biome, we can also find powdered snow generating naturally for the first time. Before, the only way of obtaining this type of snow was using a cauldron and waiting for it to fill with snow in the cold biome, but now you should be careful while traveling in snowy biomes. Going into block changes, cave vines, kelp, twisting vines and weeping vines are now able to interact with the shear, making them not grow any further. Copper ore now drops 2 to 5 raw copper when mining instead of 2 or 3. The enchanting table now emits a light level of 7. The texture of lapis in the GUI for the enchanting table has been updated to match the texture update. A block of copper can now be converted into 4 cut copper using a stone cutter. The conduit now has a tool assigned to it, and here is a pickaxe. The inventory icons for campfires, soul campfires, wooden doors, iron doors, item frames, glow item frames and signs have been tweaked to better match the texture of their corresponding blocks. The stripped dark oak log texture is now darker, to better match this bedrock variant. A new music disc from Lena Rain, called The Other Side, was added to the game. It can be found in stronghold chests and dungeon chests. and other soundtracks from the same artist have been added to the game soundtrack. There will be a link in the description below if you want to hear them. Now, going into the changes to mobs, there is another major change, and that is that mobs will only spawn in total darkness, meaning a light level of 0 and not 7 like before. So an item like a torch would prevent spawns in the area marked with gold blocks, and now it will prevent spawns all the way to the emerald blocks, and blocks like the glow icon and candles will now actually prevent mob spawning too. While sprinting, if you hit a wall at a low angle, you will no longer get reduced to just walking. It's a very minor, but it might be useful while sprinting in tight corridors. Axolotls now should spawn only in water that's above clay blocks in lush caves, and they have their own mob cap now. Cod, salmon, pufferfish, tropical fish, squid and dolphins now only spawn in water above Y50, stopping at Y64, with the exception of the tropical fish that can spawn in the lush caves of any height. Drowned can now spawn in water inside of dripstone caves. All pillagers will ignore baby villagers and instead will kill the adults. Glow squids now only spawn in water under Y30, without the need of total darkness. Goats will now only spawn in snowy and frozen mountain biomes, meaning it will only spawn in the snowy slopes, jagged peaks and frozen peaks. Horses, mules and donkeys will now follow a player holding a golden carrot, golden apples or an enchanted golden apple. Llamas will now follow a player holding hay bales. All mobs that look at a player while holding an item, when named Dinner Bone, will now look at the player correctly instead of looking into the ground. There has been AI optimization for the axolotls, goats, hoglins, zoglins, piglins, piglin brutes and also villagers. And some minor texture corrections in some zombie villagers and in the wither projectile, but nothing relevant, so just some small changes. Now, talking about structures, amethyst geodes will only spawn below Y30. Buried treasure chests can now contain water breathing potions. Desert pyramids no longer generate on water and now should spawn on the surface instead of a fixed Y level, but most times will be partially buried like this one. The amount of dungeons that spawn, especially below Y0, has been increased. Fossils that generate deep in the world will now generate with deep slate diamond ore instead of coal ore in their bone structure. Jungle pyramids won't generate on water anymore. Mineshafts now generate iron in the mesa biome. Pillager outposts now are able to generate in the new mountain biomes. Villages can now generate in the meadows biome. The mesa biome can now generate over mountain peaks. And red sand also generates higher in the world, with red sandstone now generating naturally once again. Beaches are now generally more white. Azalea trees should generate above lush caves, but I wasn't able to find any example of this. The bedrock layer now generates independent of a world seed. In the past, the bedrock layer was the same for every world. Clouds have been raised from Y128 to Y192. Many biomes have been renamed or removed from the game, but nothing was lost because the removed biomes have been integrated into their main variants, meaning you should not see any difference, only the name, and if you are interested there will be a list of changed names and removed biomes in the description. Ore generation has also been changed. Coal ore will now generate evenly between Y136 and Y256, and increasing from Y0 to Y192, peaking at an altitude of Y96 where it's more common. Copper ore now generates between Y-16 and Y112, generating the most at Y48, and bigger blobs of copper can be found in dripstone caves. Iron ore generates from Y80 to Y256, generating more the higher you go in the world, and generating also at Y56 to Y-24, with smaller blobs from Y72 to the bottom of the world. Gold ore now generates between the altitude of Y-64 and Y32, peaking at Y-16 where it's more common. Also, extra gold generates below -48. The extra gold that generates in the Mesa biome was increased with the top height limit from Y79 to Y256 and increased the number of blobs you can find. Lapis lazuli ore spawns between Y32 and Y-32, peaking at the altitude of 0 where it's more common, and evenly between the altitude of Y64 and Y-64 without air exposure. Redstone ore generates evenly between the altitude of Y15 and Y-64 and has a spread peaking at the Y-64 and generating below an altitude of Y32. Diamond ore now generates below Y16 and generates more the lower you go in the world. Emerald ore now starts generated at Y-46 and will become more common the higher in the world you mine, to a limit of Y248. There have been minor changes in the game's interface, also known as GUI. One of those is related with the recipe book and effects. Now you will be able to see what effects your player has without the need to close the recipe book. The effect now will display on the right side of the screen, and in case you play with a small screen, only the effect icons will appear. The background panorama of the main menu has been updated to show the new mountains and biomes of 1.18. The sneak, sprint and auto jump options have been moved into the controls tab. A new slider called the simulation distance has been added, that to this point was tied with the render distance. What this does is set how far in chunks the game will process everything that is happening, like mob AI, crops growing, copper oxidation and other things, to improve performance if you need it. The render distance now will render the world in a cylindrical shape around the player instead of a square. The default game brightness is now 50 instead of 0, also known as moody. You can now disable lightning from making the sky flash. Lightning bolts themselves will still appear and make sound. The device that the game outputs the audio to can now be chosen in-game. Now you can see a saving level text on the bottom right when you pause the game. Now, related to updating your world to the new version, Mojang has put in a lot of work to make sure it's totally fine to update your world from 1.17, with features like biome and terrain blending that will make sure that the older world terrain will blend smoothly with the new chunks, avoiding sharp walls and biome transitions between new and older chunks. And older chunks will also generate new underground caves below Y0, as the bedrock layer in this will disappear and new ones will generate below Y-64. Some minor things in this update are that it will now run on Java 17 instead of Java 16, meaning only that if you use the original launcher it will automatically update Java for you, or if you use a third-party launcher you will need to update it yourself. The seed algorithm has also been changed, so if you have a seed that you use regularly, it will instead generate a completely different world from before, and seeds now will generate similarly between Bedrock and the Java version. There are also many bug fixes and technical gameplay corrections like advancements and triggers for certain events, some bugs around mob behavior and so on that mostly do not affect the average player or that you would not notice much. But in the case anyone is interested, it's best to check the wiki about 1.18 to find a complete list and detailed notes on everything bug related. This update will change Minecraft forever, and the new changes are all very welcome, giving the world a breath of fresh air as you now come across with amazing natural structures like you've never seen before, encouraging some exploring, both in the surface and in the new caves that are now much more interesting and also dangerous. So, I hope you enjoyed the video. Remember to leave a like and consider subscribing to the channel. I currently have a survival series, so if you want to check that out, there will be links in the description, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!